right, good morning. Our learning is Nishmas Mindel Mayim Bas Kamen Ruvain. We are in the midst of discussing the notion of what a kamiyah, that is an expert's kamiyah. Looked into a little bit, didn't have too much time to research it thoroughly, but the Rambam, I found a source in the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim where he blasts kamiyahs. He says these are terrible things, you shouldn't believe in these things, they're terrible, no one should do them. And then, of course, in Mishnah Torah, he writes, if you wear kamiyah, you could carry it on Shabbos because, if it's B'Torah expert. So there's this tension over here. There's a lot of different theories in terms of the Rambam and the rationalists, how they deal with kamiyahs. But again, I didn't get too much further. But again, it seems like not that long ago, but it fell out of was not really used so much anymore. But by the time we get to the end of our learning today, there will be one very important practical piece that we'll take from the kamiyah discussion. Okay, but with that,
sense for him to have both of those.
It's consistent.
One is prescriptive in terms of a halachic answer, but the other is this is completely bogus.
Correct.
But
yeah.
if you do this, you have to have an answer.
Absolutely, I hear you. Okay, so the last thing we saw was a brisa that quoted this notion of what a kamea of a mumcha is, and it said kol sheripe v'shana v'shilish, any amulet that cured more than one time. Okay, not more than one, 3 times. Okay, but then the brisa at the top of Samach Aleph Amud Beis asks Vatanya. We have a brisa that says differently. Is there kamea mumcha? What is a kamea? What is an amulet which is considered effective? Kol sheripe shlosha v'nei adam ke'echad. It's not enough that it cured 3 times, but rather has to cure 3 people. Right, so obviously curing 3 people is more. So the Gemara is wondering which one is it? Is it that it cures 3 times, okay, which could mean even by one person, or is it 3 different people? So the Gemara says lokasha, no contradiction. The second brisa, which says it has to be curing 3 different people, lamchuye gavra. That's to prove that the individual who writes the amulet is an expert. The brisa that said that an amulet that cures 3 times can now be carried is considered expert. Lamchuye kamiyas, to say that this style amulet is effective. In other words, there's texts which are going to be written in the different amulets. So the brisa that we started off with, the brisa we read yesterday, which said that as long as he healed 3 different people, 3 different times, then it's going to be considered an expert's kameya. That's to prove that's if the same text is written 3 different times and it heals 3 different scenarios, that means that this text is a valid text. The brisa that said it has to heal 3 different people, that's in order to demonstrate that the writer of the kameya is an expert. Okay, so the different, right? Fine. Okay, it says the Gemara Amar Papa Pshitali. Papa says he breaks down the laws of what establishes expertise in kameya writing. Amar Papa Pshitali plus kameya plus gavre. Let's say one person wrote 3 different types of amulets for 3 different type of people. Tlasa zimni, and each one of the amulets cured 3 times. Okay, so again, one guy, one healer, or whatever we're going to call him, kamea writer, is writing amulets for 3 different people and 3 different scenarios, right? So one person has a sinus infection, one person has a growth, and one person has a broken femur. I don't know, whatever. Fine, I don't know. Okay, so bottom line is that in those cases, and it's one person doing 3 different people 3 different times. Itamche itmeche gavra itmeche kamia. The person is proven an expert, and that impact and the fact that these amulets each of them cured 3 times. That proves that the amulet is proven as well. Tlasa kamiyah, tlasa gavre. Okay, let's say you have a healer with 3 different amulets for 3 different people. Chad zimna, and each one of the amulets cured 1 time. Right, the case before was each one of these amulets cured 3 times. Now it's the 3 different people, and the amulet is curing 1 time each. Gavre tamche. The first case is
3 people each.
3 people each time. So yeah, my thing gets better, and then later on a person gets worse. It's happening 3 separate times. Okay, now it's 3 different people, 3 different illnesses, and it works. Okay,
just
one time. Gavre tamche. The man is proven to be an expert because he's healed 3 different people with 3 different illnesses. Kamiyah lo tamche. But this text has not proven to be effective because it's only worked 1 time with each person. Okay, chad kamiyah tlasa gavre. Let's say you have 1 amulet, meaning 1 text of an amulet for 3 people who all have the same illness. Then the amulet text has been proven to be effective. But the individual's not been proven to be effective because it's like one trick, what do they call it? One trick pony, thank you, right? One trick pony. All we've proven is that he knows this trick. He knows this one kamiyah. But we haven't seen him in a variety of situations. Okay, Bar Papa. Fine, that Rav Papa says is obvious. Rav Papa now asks, Talasa kamiyah lechad gavra. Let's say you have someone who wrote 3 different amulets for a single person. Okay, what's the halacha? In other words, let's say the same person, the same kamea expert is writing kameas for 1 person. First guy, time the guy comes in, I have my sinus infection, and writes him a kamea, he heals him. Next day he comes in, he says, I forgot what my second example was. The guy has a whatever, broken toe, and somehow he writes the kamea and it heals, and then the third time he comes in, he has a growth, and he heals the growth. But it's all for the same person. So kamea vade lo tamche. In such a case, the amulet is certainly not proven to be effective, because it's only worked one time. Gavre tamche lo tamche. Do we say that the man has been proven to be effective, the writer has been proven to be effective, because he's just healed in 3 different scenarios, right? Mi amrina, do we say ha'asile? At the end of the day, he cured 3 different situations. Odilma mazal da gavra hu dekam mekabel kasava. Do we say the mazel of this individual is accepting the cure of this person's amulets? In other words, maybe we say it's only because he's writing it for this person. So how could you say, do you know necessarily, right? In other words, let's think about this from a medical perspective. The fact that, to have a study would not be enough to say, well, it keeps on working for person X. You'd have to see through a variety of people, because there's a variety of, just from a purely scientific perspective, a person can respond in different ways. You have to go through a whole bunch of people in order to say this is an effective type of medicine. The fact that it heals one person, even if it works one time for the same person, there could be something unique about this person. So in the Gemara's terminology, it's not talking about their unique biology, it's saying their mazel, some spiritual component, metaphysical component, but the point is that it's the same thing. It's limited. Can you necessarily prove something from one person alone? Teku, the Gemara is not sure and leaves it as a question.
So if you did 3 for 3 different for this one person,
yeah,
not enough for the person who wrote it, would it take 2 other people, or would it be enough if there were just one other person?
No, so we say, well, as long as you have 3 people, it has to be 3 people
so it wouldn't be enough to have 3 and then, oh, by the way, somebody else.
Correct. You need 3 people there. That was what purpose. Right. Right. It have to be 3 people in order to, because with one person we're saying that maybe it's because this one person they have this connection, or because this person's mazel.
Then it wouldn't be enough, even though it's 4 healings. But it's only 2.
Correct, but it has to be 3 different people, because then you don't have to worry about that would be enough to be considered a legitimate study of kameas, because then it's not one person's mazel maybe, but 3 people's mazel, that would already be a big deal. Okay. The Gemara asks a further question about kameas. Kamea yesh behen mishum kedusha, or dilma ein behem mishum kedusha. Do kameas have sanctity, or do they not have sanctity? Now the Gemara is going to try to understand what the question is all about, whether they have sanctity or not. We'll see what the question is about. Lamai hilchasa. The Gemara says, regarding which halacha are we asking this question? And obviously not a theoretical question. What is the halacha? If we want to say it's about saving it from a fire on Shabbos, again, you have a fire on Shabbos and it's there's no eruv, and so taking things out of the house is typically forbidden. And we'll talk about later on in the Masechta about what you can take out, what you can't take out. But if it's regarding what you're allowed to save from the fire, which we are allowed to save Sifrei Torah in a certain manner, Tashma, we learned habrachos v'kamein. If you have things which are, you have things which are written with the brachos are written on, like almost like a siddur of sorts, or a kameya, even though they have the names of Hashem, and even though they have sections from the Torah, they cannot be saved from a fire. Okay, we'll talk about that more in more detail when we get there, but the point is that there is a dispensation to save certain things from a fire, but not these. Okay, and you are allowed to leave them there even though they are going to burn. Ella le'inyan geniza. Rather, what we must be talking about is if you want to go ahead and put it away, right? In other words, you have geniza. Geniza is like what we call shemus. In other words, you have an amulet, and the amulet, you're done using the amulet or something along those lines. And now, what do you do with it? You want to. So, do you have to bury it, or could you put it in the garbage? Okay. So, Tashma, the Gemara, we bring a proof. Hayakasuv al yados hakelim. If one of the names of Hashem was written on the handle of a utensil, valkari amita, or in the leg of a bed, yagod v'yignezenu. You can't use it until you cut it off. And then what do you do with the name of Hashem? You have to store it away. Okay, so you see clearly that anything that has the name of Hashem, forget amulets, if a bed has the name of Hashem written on the leg, or a handle of a pot has the name of Hashem, you put it in shemus. So why would a kameya be any different? Okay, the question that's being asked is, are you allowed to bring these into the bathroom or not? Yeshbem kedusha v'aser. Do we say that an amulet is considered kadosh, and therefore you cannot enter a bathroom wearing them? Or do we say, granted, it might have the name of Hashem, might have psukim on it, but at the end of the day, an amulet is not considered holy, and therefore you'd be allowed to bring it into the bathroom. So the Gemara is now going to try to bring a proof, one way or another, about whether or not you could bring or should bring a kameya into the bathroom or not. So Tashma.
Generally, we would say.
Okay, but let's start. Let's hear. This is the starting point of this discussion.
I'm saying, but just with anything into the bathroom.
Okay, but we know that, meaning we can't. Where are you coming from on that? You're coming from conclusions based on this Gemara. Okay, so this is a source. There's a source that talks about what you're allowed to bring in the bathroom. Obviously, you're not allowed to bring Sifrei Kodesh into the bathroom. What about Kamea, right? You can't bring a Siddur, you can't bring a Sefer. What about a Kamea which has some parts of Psukim, not full Psukim, might have a name of Hashem? What's the story? Is that considered holy enough that you can't bring it into the bathroom or not? So we may know some of the lachos. We'll see. We're going to imagine learn something new, but we'll see. The source for this that discussion is this discussion about a Kamea. So Tashma, okay, we have a Mishnah, and by the way, a very practical example of this is not just Sidurim, but probably our most modern day similar to a kamea item would be like jewelry. There's a lot of jewelry that people make which have psukim, right? They have the rings which have like words of psukim, or they have names of Hashem. Most of many of the poskim say, please stop writing them. You should not be writing them, but they sell and people have them. And the question is, you have these pieces of jewelry which have the name of Hashem. That's very similar to kamea. Are you allowed to wear those into the restroom or not? That is found, that discussion starts over here. Okay, so Tashma, let's bring a proof from our Mishnah, because the Mishnah said, the Mishnah said, you cannot wear a kameya when it's not from an expert, right? So what do we learn from there? Ha min mumcha, nafik. Now, if it is written by a mumcha, if it's written by an expert, you are allowed to walk around on Shabbos wearing this amulet. Okay, and if you want to tell me that a kameya, it has intrinsic sanctity, which means you cannot wear it in a restroom, zimnim dimitrich levesa kisei, right? Sometimes you have to go to the bathroom. We saw that's tefillin, right? The reason you have it's tefillin, according to everyone, is not because wearing the tefillin was problematic. It's because I'm going to go to the bathroom and have to take off my tefillin. So if you want to tell me a kameya also, it's holy and I therefore can't wear it in the bathroom, so I don't know what's going on over here. So if you then how am I allowed? I'm going to need the bathroom. I'm going to take it off and I'm going to carry it. So clearly, the fact that I'm not concerned, the Mishnah is not concerned that I'm going to do that, and says I am allowed to wear an expert's amulet. Clearly, I don't have to take it off before going into the bathroom, or else it would be the same category as tefillin. So Gemara says no. Good way around it. Gemara says no. We're not talking. Remember, there's two types of kameyas. There's a kameya with psukim and names of God, etc., etc., and there's kameyas of herbs. Okay, so maybe we're talking about the kameya of herbs. The Gemara says, nice try. Vatanya, the Brisa taught explicitly. Echa kameya shel ksav, ve'echa kameya shel ikaron. Our Mishnah wasn't so clear, but the Brisa that we quoted yesterday made it very clear that the kameya that you're allowed to wear, if it's written by an expert, is not only one of herbs, but it's also one that has the names of Hashem. It's one that's written. So we're back to our attempted proof that you are allowed to wear kameya into a bathroom. The Gemara says, no. We're talking about a person who is dangerously ill. Okay, and therefore they're not going to take off the kameya, right? And that's why the person's allowed to wear it into. That's why a person's allowed to wear it into Rosh Hashanah. They're never going to take it off because they're dangerously ill, and therefore also they're going to wear it into the bathroom. That's not. We don't have a proof to the regular question of a kameya. The Gemara asks, "What are you talking about?" Vatanya, echad cholesh yesh b'sakana, ve'echad cholesh yesh b'sakana. Our Brisa, the Brisa we read yesterday, told us that the kameyas we're talking about is whether the person is ill, like very ill, or the person is not very ill. So we see. And yet, again, the Brisa is telling us if it's written by an expert, you are allowed to wear it. Clearly then, and the Brisa is not concerned you're going to carry it for Amos and Rosh Hashanah, clearly you're allowed to wear it into the bathroom. Ella, the Gemara says, Kevan demase, since it cures, afagav denakile bidei, nami shapir dami. Since it cures, it's basically seen as no different than any item which cures, in which case you're allowed to carry it in your hands. What that means is as follows. You have certain items which the way to carry it, the way that an ill person needs to utilize it is even by carrying it. And we say that's not called carrying. That's called an accessory of the ill person. If it's an accessory of the ill person, that's not considered like carrying a burden. Whether it's worn, meaning typically we always think of on Shabbos, if I'm walking around without an Eruv, I have to go ahead and wear the item. But that's not entirely true. If the only way, the function of this item is to hold it, then that's okay. And when we have, and that's true for certain healing items, we'll talk about those a little bit later, I think. But with certain healing items, you're allowed to carry them. And here too, you're allowed, since it's meant for curing, and you don't have to wear the command necessarily. You could also be carrying it, holding it, and therefore there's no issue of carrying in Rosh Hashanah, and therefore there's no issue of carrying in Rosh Hashanah because. Then the person could leave it outside the bathroom because, the whole thing is, we thought initially you have to be wearing it. And therefore we said if the person takes it off and then holds it, that's going to be a problem. Now we're saying, well, there's no problem holding it. And therefore, the person takes it off before going to the bathroom. They're going to hold it and walk around with it. But that's normal because you're allowed to do so. The Gemara is going to question that. Turn the page.
There's no issue with carrying it.
There's no issue with carrying it. And therefore you can't bring a proof.
There's no issue.
Well, therefore you can't bring a proof about whether or not it can be worn into the bathroom.
Right.
Question? Yeah?
I'm just wondering about when something's not mumcha, can you carry it on Shabbos?
What do you mean?
Command, it's not mumcha.
So this is still only for a kamea that's a mumcha, right? Meaning, in other words, if it's not an expert kamea, right, we're still talking about the Bryce and the Mishnah both distinguished between expert kamea and a non-expert kamea. We're saying if it's an expert kamea, since it's a healing device, and one of the ways of carrying the healing device, of wearing the healing device, is just simply holding it in the hands, then the Gemara at this point is assuming you are allowed to hold in your hand, just like it's true for other medicinal items. You're allowed to carry it around, but still only for an expert kamea. Okay, but the Gemara is going to point out that's not true. Vatanya, on top of Samach Beis Amud Aleph, Vatanya, we learned in a brisa, not this way. Rabbi Oshia says, you're not allowed to carry the kameh in your hand. Right? Don't assume that the way that Rav Oshia is understanding it is amulets is only considered a medical accessory when it's being worn. In other words, yes, there are some items that the way it functions is by carrying it. By carrying it. But now we're saying no, the way that the kameh is functional is by wearing it. And therefore, we're back to the original question. We're talking about a kameh that is not for a chola sheyesh bo sakana. It's even a kameh which is for a chola she'ein bo sakana. So not a person who's dangerously ill. And therefore, they could and should take it off before, they don't have to wear it all the time. And we're saying that it has to be worn around you. You can't carry it. So the fact that the brisa allows it to be worn into the Rishus Harabim indicates that you're allowed to wear it into the bathroom. Because if you were not allowed to wear it into the bathroom, right, then you would end up taking it off. The Gemara says, we're talking about an amulet which is covered with hide, with skin, with leather, right? So basically it's wrapped up. Yes, it might have the name of Hashem, but since it's wrapped up, right, many of the kameyas, you would not be able to see the kameyas, right? A lot of the, there's always a big, you read all these stories about the kameyas when they opened up and they read inside, right? The whole Rav Yonasan Eibeshitz and Rav Yaakov Emden, it wasn't like people saw the kameyas. One day, one guy decided to open the amulet, but it wasn't the norm to open the amulet. They say a story, I don't know if it's true. They say a story about Rav Kiva Eger once wrote an amulet, and they looked inside the amulet. Rav Kiva Eger was not known to be like a big mystic. They looked at the amulet, and he wrote a pshat and tosfos on it. Like that was his amulet. His amulet was like was a lumdus, on a tosfos. Fine. Whatever. The point is that they were writing, whatever it was, that people didn't always see what was inside of it. It was oftentimes covered up. So the point is that since it's covered up, that's why it's allowed. That's why you're allowed to wear it into the restroom. The Gemara asks, wait, tefillin, we all have tefillin. And it's covered in leather, right? We have the scroll of its tefillin, and it's covered in leather. Vitanya hanichlas vesakise choletz tefillin berichuk ara amos v'nichnas. You have to take off your tefillin 4 amos away. And then you wear your tefillin, and then you could go into the bathroom, right? But the point is that even though it's tefillin, it has leather covering, you're not allowed to wear it into the restroom. The Gemara answers, Hasam mishum shin. There, by the tefillin, the reason you can't wear it into the restroom is because it has the letter shin, which stands for the Shem Hashem, Shakai, and that's why you can't wear it, because even though it's covered with leather, there's also one of the names of God, or a representation of the name of God on the outside. Damar Abaye, shin shal tefillin halach lamosh misinai. The shin of tefillin is halach lamosh misinai, and that is, and therefore, and that's why it can't be worn into the bathroom. Damar Abaye says, Dalil shal tefillin halach lamosh misinai. The dalid that is on the back of the head, which is where the straps meet, that is also alach l'mishmi sinai. V'amar Abaye yud shel tefillin alach l'mishmi sinai. The letter yud that is on the knot is alach l'mishmi sinai. Right. So together, the three of them, shin, dalid, yud, spell the name of Hashem. But the point is that it's a name of Hashem, even though it's not your typical way of writing the name of Hashem. But the shin, the dalid, and the yud are all spell the name of Hashem, and that's why it can't be worn. That's why it has to be covered. But your kameya is allowed to be worn as long as it's covered with skin. So we've just answered the question that really kameya should not be worn in the bathroom because if it has one of the names of God or it has psukim, but if it's covered, then you are allowed to wear it. So the question then is, what about your modern day ring or necklace that has a pasuk, a few words from a pasuk? Typically the post can look at 3 words from a pasuk as being substantial. 2 words most do not, but 3 words from a pasuk. So you have, let's see, a lot of the rings of Yarastichli Olam, right? Which is basically I will be married to you forever, which is a beautiful pasuk, but it's also a pasuk, and you're wearing it on a ring. Or you have Anila Dodi, right? Anila Dodi is Anila Dodi, so that might be 2 psukim. Anila Dodi v'Dodi li, right? Or Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. You have all these psukim. Are you allowed to wear these to the bathroom or not? So it would sound like, as long as they're being covered by one covering, it would sound like it's okay. That said, there are poskim who argued this. They say this is only because you're stuck. You're walking around in the public domain and you have nothing to do. So there, yeah, you have one cover, it's okay. But really, this shouldn't even, this is all b'diavad. This is all when you're in a situation where you have no alternative. But let's say you're in your house, you should take it off. Let's say you have the ability of how to construct it and you don't, then you should go ahead and either put it down or you should have two coverings, right? So this is the poskim say, the way the poskim land is that ideally, really, these things should have two coverings. So it lets you have like a siddur or mishnayos or whatever it is, asher yatzer card, whatever it is that you want to bring into the bathroom. You should have not just one cover, but a second cover. The second cover could be your pocket, right? But basically, you have to have like put in a bag and then into another cover. They say one of the covers should not be see-through, right? You see it's or over here. It's something which is not see-through. One of the covers could be see-through, but basically you want to have two coverings in order to bring it to the bathroom. When it comes to jewelry, most of us can say ideally you want to take it off before you go to the bathroom. But if you're stuck, if you're in a situation where you can't take it off, you're in a public place, you're going to leave your ring outside, you won't see your ring in 2 minutes, or something along those lines, then you would be allowed to rely on the opinion that says one covering is okay. So let's say you have a necklace, you could put it, some say you can even put it under your shirt, tuck it in, that would be okay. The same with the ring, you can just slip it into your pocket, that would be okay. Again, ideally the poskim say, first of all, the poskim say stop writing these psukim on these rings, not a good idea. But if you do, then again, ideally double covering, but if you're stuck, a single covering, based on this Gemara, clearly a single covering would be sufficient, and we'll stop over here. Okay, have a wonderful day.